Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Friday, and all of our guests today, including Thomas Drance from The Athletic, standing by. Brought to you by the Bayside Oceanfront Resort. Experience West Coast luxury in Vancouver Island's winter charm with the Bayside Oceanfront Resort's winter getaway. 2 nights or more, enjoy 25% off, Rick. Now available every day of the week. Choose from oceanside views with spacious double queen or king rooms. Enjoy pet-friendly accommodations, complimentary on-site parking. The list goes on. Call them directly, 250-248-8333, or visit BaysideResortParksville.com and book your winter escape today. Thomas Drance from The Athletic joining us now. We're just waiting on Thomas. Okay, well, while we're waiting on Thomas, let's do this. Delaney's OK Tire in Langley inbox. We've got all sorts of submissions today, as you can imagine.
Fired up.
A lot of people wondering what we were doing before the show started, given how giggly we were during the first segment. But in early, is it just me? Eric, the greenskeeper, is it just me? The Adams curse is real. The Jack Adams curse is real. Referring to Rick Tocchet winning the Jack Adams. And people even saying when he won it last year, Rick, that, man, I hope the Jack Adams curse isn't a real thing. It looks like it now, and of course, people are well aware that oftentimes when a coach wins a Jack Adams award, or is even a finalist for a Jack Adams award, he doesn't last that much longer on the job.
Well, and a lot of heat on Tocchet right now. I see it. Fire Tocchet, fire Tocchet, fire Tocchet. Sure, go ahead. And then go find a coach that's going to work with this core group for the 4th time in 4 years. Have you ever heard?
They'll find a coach.
They'll find a coach.
People want NHL jobs. But I think what your point is, it's not the coach.
It's not ideal to have 4 coaches in 4 years, Don. Not ideal at all. Successful teams don't have 4 coaches in 4 years.
Got Thomas? Yeah. Thomas Drance. Took a while, but he's here. Worth the wait. From The Athletic. How are you, sir?
Doing well, gentlemen. I'm doing well. Ugly one last night. Never want to describe a team's performance as indifferent, but they looked indifferent last night.
Yeah. And I think the fans are starting to feel the same way, which is, and we've gone on a lot about this on the show, not good for business. Thomas, where's the energy level, especially at the start of games? Where is it?
Well, that's the problem. Like, technically, I don't feel like they're actually playing terrible hockey. I mean, they did last night. They played really bad hockey last night. But for the most part, over this stretch, and, it's 3 wins since Christmas. That's a 13-game span. Like, those are the types of spans that take you from being in the mix in the top 3 in your division to being out of the playoffs, right? Like, those are the sorts of stretches that good teams do not have. And the Canucks right now are not playing like a good team, and they're in one of these stretches. They're not, for the most part, last night aside, getting shellacked night to night in terms of the flow of games. Like, they're generally able to impose their preferred pace on games. They're playing this low event hockey. Their defensive structure is not as good as it was last year, but it's not a train wreck. The finish hasn't been there. The goaltending hasn't been there. And that's, I think, making things look worse than they are night to night. But all of that said, gentlemen, you can't escape the evident. Like, this is evident. This is something we can see, that fans can see, that the players know. Rick Tocchet can see it. The lack of effort, the lack of sort of like a competitive spine. It's baffling to me. And actually, when I think you think about what's different about this year than last year, as much as you can talk about all the bounces that team got and all the good health, like, the discipline with which this team executed last season is gone, absent. This team's showing up night to night, and it's not just that we don't know what we're going to get. Now I feel like we sort of actually have a relatively predictable sense that there's going to be not enough guys going, and those guys that are going to start pushing, and then there's mistakes that happen. They don't stand up for one another. They don't seem to compete for one another. There's no joy in watching this team play right now. And I mean, I don't know. Like, I know that management's throwing their hands up. I know that Rick Tocchet, I mean, you can tell with Rick Tocchet's post-game availabilities, like, he just can't understand it. And we can't understand watching it. Like, it's ugly when you combine a lack of offensive juice with the sorts of bad vibes that we're getting from this Canucks team at the moment. I mean, what do you have? Not a whole lot.
Yeah, Thomas, and I wonder about consumer confidence, and when the owner starts to get a little bit angry here, because consumer confidence is not good. I want to ask you about Demko. His last 4 starts, which were consecutive starts, he's allowed 16 goals. Like, Thomas, what are you seeing there? He had the long break. We know 10 months off for a goalie is not a lot of fun. It's not ideal. But man, oh man, he's playing in front of a shaky defense, but 16 goals against in 4 games is 16 goals against in 4 games. It's not good.
No, it's not good. And yeah, he is playing in front of a shaky defense, but he hasn't been bailing them out the way that he does when he's on, right? I mean, let's not forget the levels that we're talking about when we're talking about Thatcher Demko. I mean, this is a guy who has mostly performed at the level of one of the best goaltenders in hockey, and is struggling enormously at the moment, even adjusted for the defensive play in front of him. This hasn't been good enough, and he knows that. I mean, he talked about it after the loss on Tuesday night, nailed it. And, you know, he knows it. You can tell. Here's what sort of concerns me about it, gentlemen. You know, what this reminds me of a little bit. Do you remember when Demko sort of had the season end early during the Bruce There It Is bump, right? And he sustained that injury. And then, you know, subsequently, like, he comes back at training camp, starts for the Canucks to start the season, and has like 6 really tough weeks at the outset of the season, and then gets re-injured. And subsequently, Bruce Boudreau would say, you know, that Demko had sort of rushed back, that he wasn't at 100%. I worry that his form right now is most reminiscent to me of what we saw in that October and November slate of Boudreau's final season, right? Like, that's sort of what it looks like to me, which isn't to say that he's not fully healthy or anything like that, but I do sort of wonder, or that he's rushed back. Like, I'm not commenting on it like that. Just in terms of his actual goaltending, you know, he's getting beat on shots from distance. He's struggling with dead angle shots. He's struggling to sort of control rebounds on wrist shots. You know, a lot of the issues that we're seeing in terms of the pucks he's not stopping look a lot to me like the issues that he had in that stretch of games during that 2022-23 campaign. And that worries me because, you know, it does suggest to me anyway that at least partially this is, whether it's comfort or you know, this suggests to me that it's not just confidence, but it might be something a little more physical, a little more intractable, something more tricky to work through. So anyway, I'm not an expert on goaltending, but as I watched him play last night, I thought, man, I feel like this reminds me a lot of some of those games that we saw in the fall of 2022.
Thomas, let's go over to the JT Miller trade. It's not happening. We're hearing, you know, bad offers. Canucks are not happy with the offers. Nickel and dimed. Nick Kirby has told us this morning they're getting nickel and dimed. What's your feeling on Miller and a possible trade?
Yeah, I mean, you think it's off, Rick?
No, I'm just saying the offers have not been great. They're still trying to peddle both, Miller and Pettersson. They're taking offers on both, Thomas. I'm just saying, like, everybody wants the Miller deal done yesterday, but there's a reason why it's not done. The offers haven't been great.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated to watch how this plays out. You know, you mentioned consumer confidence and the owner getting mad, and one thing that's happened somewhat frequently over the course of the last 10 years is, you know, hockey operations groups come in and they have some success, and you know, they get some autonomy to make their decisions, and then as things start to go badly, you know, after the 2011 Stanley Cup final, you know, that 2016 season, sort of in the tail end of Trevor Linden's presidency, and then obviously during the pandemic, like we've seen it with sort of 3 different iterations of Canucks hockey operations groups, where, you know, as things start to sort of unwind or unravel, you know, ownership can get a little more involved, and that hasn't served this franchise well across the past decade. You certainly hope that we don't bump into that again, because I do think the Canucks have really solid, competent hockey people in charge who've mostly done really good work. You know, even if I disagreed with the direction that they charted about 18 months ago and thought they should have rebuilt and taken a longer view, and you know, I kind of wasn't in on this core's ability necessarily to win together. You know, there's no disputing the execution of the plan that they did follow in building that team we saw last year, right? I mean, there's no doubting that they've done a excellent job unwinding cap issues, and they've done a really good job evaluating, bargain professional players in free agency across the last 2 off seasons. So, you hope that Rutherford and Albin's hands are firmly on the wheel here. And as for the Miller-Pettersson stuff, I mean, when we were looking into it last weekend, Rick, we were told, like, until one guy goes, this could go in either direction. But here's the thing, right? Like, the club knows that they're going, if they make a trade involving either centerman, right?
Yep.
You're going to take a step back in terms of the overall talent level of your team, probably for a period of 12 to 18 months, right? Like, there's going to be a lag in terms of replacing that player or replacing the on-ice value that they brought. Well, if you're taking 18 months to get back to where you're at now with a guy who's 26, well, okay, then he's going to be 28, right? If you're doing it with a guy who's, 6 weeks away from turning 32, well, he's going to be 34, right? Like, unfortunately, the logic sort of dictates kind of which of the two the club needs to, if they're only dealing one, I think the logic dictates that it doesn't make a lot of sense to trade Pettersson and try to push forward, right? Because you're not going to be good enough to push forward in the short term and avail yourself of sort of the years in which I think we all feel pretty confident that JT Miller is going to remain a top-end player, as opposed to those years where, he starts to be in a competition not just against 31 other NHL teams, but also against Father Time. And so I'll be fascinated to see exactly how this plays out. I think there has been a league-wide expectation that the Canucks would move somewhat quickly on Miller specifically. But that said, that was earlier this week, and we're at the end of this week and nothing has happened, and the team's in the meantime taken 2 gut punch losses, which you'd expect, honestly, to raise the urgency with which management is dealing with this. Excuse me. So, we're in wait and see mode. Clearly, with this team, we've been here before with a variety of star Canucks players over the years. Seems like we're here again, which means we're in the bad times. The bad times, never far away when you're covering the Vancouver Canucks or one of their fans.
The bad times, and you're getting choked up about it, Thomas. We just heard that.
I'm so upset.
You take care of yourself.
Much better for Canucks fans, man.
Yeah. Thomas, thanks for this. Took a while to get you, but we got you, and it was worth the wait. Thank you so much.
Sorry about that. Cheers, boys.
No problem.